Welcome to my humble little office. My name is R. Keith Andrews. I am a spiritual guide and paranormal adept. The journey continues today on November 29th, 2025 at approximately 8 p.m. PST. Now, I've made it my life's purpose to remind people that working together, we can make this a better world for virtually everybody. I bill myself as a spiritual guide because the tools I offer are the exact same tools I personally use in my day-to-day life. And the philosophies of life I talk about are the same philosophies I personally utilize to guide virtually every decision I make. With this in mind, I know these tools will work for you because they continue to work for me and have literally worked for thousands of other people over the years with varying degrees of success depending on their own personal efforts. Now, before we get started on things, we have, I do want to tip my hat to Storm. He is our primary moderator in the band. He usually sits in the background, making sure that tech works properly. And for me, that's a challenge, or more to the point, with me. We also have LA Moon in the chat room. She is the primary on-site moderator. And again, she's there to help keep the conversation going, ask questions that require asking. And most importantly, in my eyes, is quite frankly, she keeps an eye on my own health. Because, well, let's face it, dying on air is not necessarily a good idea. Although it is a bit of a showstopper. Now, we have first off, Mike Jones. You are in the house with the gold. How you doing, Mike? Glad you could join us. And then we have, right after Mike, we have Renee Andrews coming in with the silver. How you doing, Renee? Glad you could join us. And I know your life has been getting busy. I just hope things are balancing out for you. And we scroll down a bit further, and that's where we stop. Now, today, we are looking at aliens. What are the accommodations these Ssrraazzaassians make for visitors to their homeworld? Now, to be clear, Ssrraazzaassians are a reptilian race. Adults average between 7.5 and 8 feet tall. They grow their own armor. Okay, you would probably refer to it as scales, but we are talking heavy scaling. Okay, the nice part about it is when with them, the Ssrraazzaassians come from a very high density planet, high gravity planet. This said, their gravity is about twice what it is on Earth. This means not only is their cell structure tighter, but their strength is staggering. Okay, I've literally watched these guys accidentally dislocate somebody's arm just by reaching down and touching it. Now, I can't really blame them for looking down on humans. Let's face it, they are taller than most humans and I misquoted that. Ssrraazzaassians are 7.5 to 8.5 feet. Okay, this is why they look down on humans, because there's very few humans that actually hit 7 feet, never mind 7.5. Although I did actually run into one the other day, into a human that is 7'8". Now, I'll tell you, that man is head and shoulders above a lot of people. But the Ssrraazzaassians, some of the things they do to accommodate, number one, most visitors, whether they are human or otherwise, are outfitted with an adjustable exoskeleton. Because now in the complexes, gravity is adjusted for visitors. So the Ssrraazzaassians simply take it and pay attention to what's going on. Jeff Garvey, how you doing? You are in with, where are we here? You are in with the bronze. There we go. Just got to do a real quick count. Glad to see you, Jeffrey. And just a real quick note, if you've got a question there, Jeff, absolutely put it in the chat room. But do me a favor and put it in all caps so I can find the thing. I will do my best to answer it. Okay, unfortunately, I do not always see them. Okay, now in the visitor complexes, in the common areas, gravity is left at standard for the majority of the visitors. So Ssrraazzaassians are working in lighter gravity. Okay, however, you do not go outside into the Ssrraazzaassian homeworld, outside the complexes, without a sealed suit. And there's a reason for that. You see, if you've been in a sandstorm on Earth, this is great. Okay, it's a little rough. Some of you may have experienced it or experienced a dust storm. Okay, where you get that little bit of grit hitting you in the middle of a windstorm. Well, on the Ssrraazzaassian homeworld, okay, that sandstorm that they have is laced with particulates that will strip a human to the bone in seconds. This is why you don't go outside without an armored exoskeleton. The exoskeleton itself is simply to make certain that you can function even in their common areas. Now, the other safeguard, and this was really developed because humans are not quite the most curious, but one of the most curious races. Now, you got to remember, we're dealing with a planet that is designed for high gravity. So it's kind of a built-in safety net. But any buttons that have to be pushed, any handles that have to be turned, are designed for Ssrraazzaassians. So unless you happen to be a professional weightlifter or just naturally very strong, you're not pushing buttons. Okay, you're not turning door handles or grabbing levers and pulling them down. Okay, because you're just physically not going to be capable of doing so without a lot of effort. Now, this is left that way for your own protection. Now, the Ssrraazzaassians do have their own guards handy, or if you will, their own caraids, to do things like open doors for people when they're coming and going, assuming you're heading for a common area that you're permitted into. Getting into secured areas takes a little bit of work. Okay, and you can think what you will from that end, because there's many people that would like to see some of the weaponry that the Ssrraazzaassians use. Okay, and I mean, some of it is fascinating, but when you're dealing with a handheld weapon, okay, that is the weight of a rocket launcher, okay, or you're dealing with, now, think of it this way, okay, actually, I should do that. I'm going to show you something here, because I can. I just got to walk over to the other side of the room to do it. Not that one. Don't know how well this will work for you. Wasn't thinking of bringing this out, but I figured what the heck. Let me just make sure I do this right. We pop that in there. Now, if you take a look at this book, okay, yes, this is the second book in the series I've actually written. The reason I brought it out, though, is this is a standard human, okay? Now, you take a look at the size of him, that's standard, okay? But this guy right here, that is a Ssrraazzaassian. Now, you see where the difference in size is, okay? Now, take a look at the size of this mace. That is a standard melee weapon for a Ssrraazzaassian. But compare the size of that to the size of the human's chest. Okay. Now, when we're looking at the Ssrraazzaassians, okay, you are looking at an incredibly large, very physically built individual. Okay. And like I said, the important factor here is these guys, the Ssrraazzaassians, are one of the few reptilians that are absolute allies to humans. And yes, you guessed it, there are Ssrraazzaassians on Earth. And yes, the Terran governments do know of them. Okay, and yeah, I realize you talk to the government, they're likely to say no, we don't. Okay, but really, can you blame them? I mean, let's face it, humans are a little on the skittish side, but on their home world. And I cannot tell you how you're going to make contact, how you're going to get to be there. I've successfully managed to orchestrate that once. And no, I'm not going to tell you who that was with. Okay. I've successfully managed to orchestrate it for one person in 62 years. So the odds are not good. Okay. Honestly, it was kind of extenuating circumstances. But the important factor from your standpoint is if you ever get there, their rules are literally there to keep you alive. Okay, you get outside without an armored exoskeleton, and there won't be a body to bury. It's not they won't desire to bury you or return your remains home. It's there won't be any. Because what you got to remember is on the Ssrraazzaassian homeworld, inside these sandstorms, live an interesting race of little beings, of carnivores, and they are humans would call them sand darts. Their actual race is Zartellan, but they are not. And like the Zartellan are not they are not a society with a global government. They are a denizen. They live on that world. And no, because of the fact they rely on the winter currents to catapult them around in order to hunt for food, they wouldn't do well on Earth. They'd starve to death. Even if you throw them into a sand pot, they're still going to end up starving to death because they don't move fast enough to do anything. Okay, but the Ssrraazzaassians, they go out of their way to help people and to keep people in line, as in, no, you can't go through that. Don't go playing with that button. They kind of treat humans in a lot of ways like children. Okay, and if you've got children of your own, you know the routine. Kid goes to grab for a button and you touch it, you pull their hand away from it. Now, Ssrraazzaassians are there as carriers, if you will, or as guides, are trained to handle people with kids' gloves. Because I kid you not, I've seen these guys, because you gotta remember, they've got talents. They're born with them. Okay. And with just the lightest pressure, they can, like, I watched them use a standard keyboard. Even their computer keyboards are built to handle their kind of impact. Because a standard human keyboard, Ssrraazzaassians will punch a hole through by accident. And I do mean through it. Okay, so when they go to remove your hand, unlike humans, where I'm sure if you were growing up when I was, it's quite normal. Kid goes to reach for something, you slap their hand. Ssrraazzaassians will not slap the hand of a human. Because in all fairness, they'll break the thing. In all probability, crush it. But Ssrraazzaassians have literally, they came to Earth to protect Earth from another species called the Teklak. These are 3.5 to 4.5 foot reptilians. Okay, raptor-like reptilians. And yes, somewhere on YouTube, there is a picture. I have no idea what the name is, what they called it. Okay, but there is a picture that shows a couple of Teklak running through the sewers of New York. It's somewhere in the YouTube archives. I saw it about 5 years ago, which might give me an idea of when to look. But the Ssrraazzaassians, they literally train to make sure they can handle humans safely. And humans are not the most fragile race to deal with. But I'm talking about humans because, well, guess what? Most of you, I suspect, are human. And if you're not, this is wonderful too. I got nothing against it. And, well, I do need to take a look at this. There we go. Just had to scroll down again and make sure I didn't miss something. Now, The other thing that the Ssrraazzaassians will do is, yes, they have been known to take people to take visitors up onto one of their ships, but again, it is under extreme control. Okay, under extreme guidance. I have yet to see anybody that is not really well placed and really well known taken anywhere of danger. Okay, now, yes, I've seen some of this gear. Okay, and what makes me special, I have no idea. Okay, in my eyes, I'm no better than anybody else. Okay, the only difference between me and most people I've met is I literally treat everybody as equals. Okay, and I have this brilliant idea. If the law says, or if the rule says this, if at all possible, follow the rule, especially if your life depends on it. Okay, and yes, there are accidents that happen. Sometimes somebody will accidentally push something. Usually that's because what happens is they're walking along and they trip and they put their whole weight onto a button or onto a lever. Okay, fortunately, because nobody to speak of is permitted in the weapons room, you don't have that little problem as far as accidental discharge goes. Now, something we have to remember about the Ssrraazzaassian homeworld, they have weapons that and they've got experimental weapons they're working on. But it's one thing for a human to turn around and for somebody to turn around and go, "Oh, what's this button do?" and push it when it's just a light switch or a burner. Unfortunately, Ssrraazzaassians have developed, they've either developed technology or have access to technology via the consortium, okay, that is capable of busting a planet open, okay, and they've got some pretty horrendous weapons. I could go into them, but I'm doing my best to look at the positive side of what's going on. Okay, and yes, if you happen to be dealing with Ssrraazzaassian with the adults, and you won't get you'll never deal directly with a child Ssrraazzaassian, because think about it, these guys are built. They grow and they are born to high gravity. And one thing I found when I went there was their nursery is incredible. Okay, because Ssrraazzaassians lay eggs, but they lay eggs. Quite often they'll lay it in their own privacy, but as soon as the eggs are laid, they are transported to the nursery where they are taken care of. Now, in the nursery, okay, eggs come from everywhere, so the Ssrraazzaassians do not know who their actual parents are. But they get put into a nursery, and then you've got young Ssrraazzaassians that do go and that spend their time in there rolling the eggs over to make sure they don't settle. This ensures safe birth. Now, here's the kicker. Ssrraazzaassians are born with a natural understanding of honor and respect. They just come out there, they just are hatched that way. So what happens is in the nursery, when the egg first cracks, Christine, how are we doing? Glad you could join us. And yes, we are doing reasonably well. Complications, but not on the home front. That's, we're working on getting my wife up here permanently now. Like, she has moved in and she is living here full time. Okay, now we're just working on the other side of it. Now, in the nursery, the second an egg cracks, okay, and you can hear, and you can see this in chicken coops on Earth, okay, where the egg will crack, and you can now hear the chicks. Well, Ssrraazzaassian babies, when they break the egg in the first place, they start crying for help. Now, here's where it gets to be different from chickens. Ssrraazzaassians turn around, the young ones that are rolling the eggs if it's convenient, if you will, they will help open up the eggs to let the babies out. This is not a test of survival for them. Okay, and the new hatchlings, they will immediately scramble to help other hatchlings break free. The biggest argument you end up with them is who gets to eat the eggshell. And yes, baby Ssrraazzaassians do eat the eggshells. Now, the neat part about it is the babies are left run there. And this is one of the reasons why the eggs stay and why the eggs get rolled over. Because you get all these little hatchlings running about, and just like baby everything, okay, they're not exactly the most coordinated. So they will run around, they'll play with each other, but the nursery is walled off because they're only born at about a foot long. Okay, but the wall to the nursery and all the adolescent Ssrraazzaassians are in there for one purpose. Okay, they are there to make sure there isn't a problem. But as the hatchlings get a little bigger, the moment they can scramble over either themselves or with the help of other hatchlings, not with the help of the adolescents. Okay, with the help of the other hatchlings, the second they can crawl over that first barrier, they graduate into the younglings. Okay, and it's the same idea. They are in there learning how to defend themselves, learning how to deal with conflict. And again, you've got slightly older ones in there that are there to break up fights and avoid fatalities, which can happen. So it's not a fail-safe. It's just a safeguard. And again, once they're big enough to do so, okay, and here's the neat little part about the next stage, going from youngling to adolescent. Younglings actively struggle with each other to make certain that the new younglings are not over the fence first. Okay, unlike with the hatchlings try and help each other. The younglings tend to try and stop each other, but without fatal conflict. Okay, and of course, your older adolescents, your teenagers, are there to ensure conflicts are kept to a minimum. I.e., oh, you two are getting a little carried away, and now you got a little blood going on. So we'll physically separate the younglings. Okay, talk to them, calm them down, and let them go back into the room. Now, here's the other question that somebody's going to be sitting there wondering. Okay, and that is, what do we do with the children with the hatchlings that are deformed, okay, or handicapped? Well, you're going to love this one. They are terminated on site. Okay, they are not, like I said, the hatchlings will help each other, but they instinctively know if one is born, whether we are talking about physically crippled or mentally slow, doesn't matter. Okay, in either event, they are fair game, and they just add to the food supply of the hatchlings. Yes, that sounds brutal, and this is why you don't put other races in the nursery with the hatchlings, because they will see you as weak and will subsequently try and eat you and succeed. So we are talking about, and we're talking about a nursery that is designed to nurture cooperation and self-sufficiency. Okay, now once they get into and then bear in mind, there are some Ssrraazzaassians, as you can well imagine, that are born with, quite frankly, what humans call dwarfism. If they do not grow big enough to get out of the nursery, they don't get out of the nursery. It's just that simple. They're not seen as defective. Okay, the reality is dwarfism and giantism are not considered a handicap or a defect. Okay. And even if you're born, even if you're born with certain anomalies, like for instance, there have been Ssrraazzaassians born with two tails. Okay. This is not considered a deformity. It is not, it's considered a rarity, but not a handicap, and therefore they are not terminated. Oh, well, thank you very much for dropping in, Renee. Really appreciate it. You have a good night. One of the things that you find with them, with Ssrraazzaassians, is they look at the various physical changes, and if they are not an impediment, they are not considered a handicap. If you're born, for instance, with only one arm or with only one leg, yeah, you're hooped right off the bat. You're absolutely terminated. Okay, this ensures your survival later. Okay, it also cuts down on the amount of food that is necessary to keep you alive, to support somebody that cannot carry their own. Okay, so what we end up with is a species that takes people that are not debilitated and eliminates them. But there is no ceremony to it. You're not looked down on. And obviously, since the parents do not know which kids are theirs without an actual genetic test and without an actual DNA test, nobody looks at you and goes, "Oh, you're defective. You gave birth to a defective kid." Okay, it's just it happens. We are talking a genetic anomaly. But if it happens that way, if it is a hindrance, i.e., they're born without a tail, they're born, well, I shouldn't say if they're born without a tail because 90% of them are born without a tail. The tail grows later. Okay. And it literally grows, the tail literally grows to create a counterbalance. Okay. Because I don't know if you're aware of this, but as a child is learning to walk, it tends to lean forward. And that tail grows to balance it out. Now, the tail is a weapon, okay? It becomes essentially, and when I say it becomes a club, it's closer to a trunk, but its purpose is balance. It can be used as a weapon, but hatchlings are born and they help each other right from the get-go. Now, understand, the younglings that are in the nursery do not pull the eggs open. That is left to the hatchlings. Okay, the younglings simply ensure the eggs, even as they're hatching, get rolled over and get turned as necessary. This is why one of the things that the younglings do is if an egg gets pushed up against the wall, it gets moved away from the wall. And yeah, it does tend to get rolled away from the wall. Eggs aren't big. Well, they're big, but you're talking about an egg about a foot in diameter. But they're rolled away from the wall so they can continue to be rolled around. And yeah, you guessed it. Some of the hatchlings will turn around and use the existing eggs as a toy. And they will, they'll roll them around and chase them all over the place. But the shells are hard enough that they won't actually crack when they when they run into each other. Now, the other safeguard you look at, where it comes to people, okay, where it comes to non-Ssrraazzaassians, is the Ssrraazzaassians go to great lengths to ensure that the diet that is being served to the visitor is digestible by the visitor. For instance, much as Ssrraazzaassians will eat their meat raw, they have cooks that are trained to ensure that food is prepped so that people can eat it. In the case of humans, it is cooked properly. They don't exactly run a restaurant. They do have them, but for visitors, it really boils down to we'll make sure it's not that's edible, that it's digestible, and most importantly, that it won't fight back. Because a lot of the food that Ssrraazzaassians eat is live. So, of course, you don't get visitors in the kitchen often, because oddly enough, it's kind of tricky to let a human into the kitchen, humans specifically, and then have your dinner eat you instead of you getting to eat dinner. These are just some of the things that are done. And of course, when we're dealing with interaction, okay, when we're dealing with the interaction between visitors and Ssrraazzaassians, on the whole do not speak the human language. They do have the Galactic Consortium did develop what would amount to a trade language, and humans are encouraged to learn it, okay, in order to be able to interact. Ssrraazzaassians are not forced to learn human languages, okay, because I will tell you, I've listened to some of these guys try and learn a human language, but their tongue is way too long, okay, it's way too long to really articulate, especially English. Okay, and there's other languages on Earth that don't work well. But this is why humans are brought, they're told, okay, we're going to teach you how to speak this trade language, as it were, so that you can communicate with the Ssrraazzaassians that are around. But understand, the caraids, the Ssrraazzaassians that are brought in as caraids, and usually this is the young teenagers. Primarily because young teenagers are about 5 feet tall, okay, which means they do not intimidate humans that much, or other species for that matter, okay, aside from the really short ones, and they can't do anything about it. But they're taught to walk, to be very careful around the fragile people, okay, and they are taught how to speak to be able to communicate with visitors. And again, the one thing that the caraids are taught is if a human is reaching to do something that is patently dangerous for them, a caraid will walk up and without warning will pick you up and move you away from whatever you're trying to grab. Instead of telling you don't touch that, they will pick you up first and set you aside and then tell you not to touch that. And they will give you a basic reason as to why. For instance, you push that button and that vacuum will suck you in and turn you into part of dinner. Okay, it's an automated carburetor. And yes, they are taught the human terms so that human technology is they can compare human technology. These are just some of the things that the Ssrraazzaassians do to ensure that you are able to deal with them without getting hurt. Okay, and preferably without getting killed. And sad to say, quite often, in spite of all of the precautions they take, quite often humans will end up being done in, or other species for that matter. Usually because they didn't follow the rules. Okay, like there are pets that you just don't pet. Okay, like on Earth, you do not pet a lion. Okay, and I mean the big one from Africa, the big mane that will eat you just as soon as look at you. Many of the pets that Ssrraazzaassians have are dangerous to other species. But you got to remember, they're dealing with a race that is high gravity, born to it. So much as they may well be a friendly animal, I will tell you, when you're dealing with what amounts to a pet pig with tusks that can punch hole in human medieval armor, okay, you're looking at something that can kill a human in flesh without even trying. So they do have all these safeguards in place, and they have very, very attentive individuals making certain the visitors do not accidentally get into a problem. And yeah, the nice part about this, one thing you will find, like I made notes the other day as soon as I got off the air yesterday, I made a bunch of notes for the reticular homeworld, because these are what I found is by reciting this stuff while I'm talking, things come to mind that I may not think about to start with. And it's like, oh yeah, I've got to add that to the book, because I've got booklets that are coming in that I'm working on. Don't know when they'll be out, don't have a time frame. Okay. Things like get to know the reticulans, get to know, well, meet the reticulans, meet the Ssrraazzaassians. Okay. And I'm putting these booklets together. They'll be small booklets for those of you that are interested, and for that matter, to make sure the information is not lost to the ages. I die, all of this information goes away. Okay, and this is why I say if you do have a question, absolutely ask. Okay, and I will do my best to give you an answer. The other neat thing that the Ssrraazzaassians do is they will listen. If you go to any one of the care aids and go, I'd really like to be able to take a look at this vehicle, or can I possibly get to look at that and get a close up look at that mace you're carrying. Now understand, a medieval mace, just bringing that to mind since I showed you a picture of it a little bit ago, a medieval mace is about 2 to 3 pounds of metal. Okay, it's literally about the size of a hardball, of a softball. Okay, on a stick. Now, a Ssrraazzaassian mace, on top of being much denser metal than what you get on Earth, okay, is also about the size of a human chest. And again, I'm just going to show you this considering we're talking about it. Whoop. I got to bring this back over to here so I can actually see it. Okay, now, if you look at this, whoop. Okay, this here is your Ssrraazzaassian. But this, where are we? I'm trying to do that backwards. There's the picture of the mace. And this here is a standard human. Take a look at the size of the head of that mace. Okay, that's how big you're looking at. So needless to say, there are very few humans that can pick them up off the ground, especially if they were set there harshly, because those maces are spiked, which means they are likely going to hold on rather well. You won't drag it along. It's not like you can slide it away. The spikes prevent this. These are just some of the things that they do. But you have absolutely, if you are brought to the Ssrraazzaassian homeworld, okay, you are told, here's the boundaries, here's what you have to pay attention to, because if you don't, it's not that we will kill you, it's you will die. Going outside into the Ssrraazzaassian homeworld, into the Ssrraazzaassian outside, without a protective exoskeleton, you'll end up dead. First of all, you got to remember, being a high gravity and higher density planet, even the oxygen is thicker. I don't mean it's got more of it. I mean the oxygen itself is thicker, making it harder to breathe. And no, I'm not going to try and get into the physics behind why that works that way. I simply know it does. I've never taken the time to really learn the physics behind it. But then, to be fair, I haven't taken the time to learn the physics behind the configuration of the oxygen molecule either, like the air molecule on Earth. Okay, I just simply know if you're outside on the Ssrraazzaassian homeworld and you don't take an exoskeleton with you, you're not wearing one, you're not going to survive. Because when a gust kicks up, it will literally, even a small wind gust, will strip a human to the bone in a heartbeat. Okay, Now, Ssrraazzaassians can come and go as they will, but you got to remember, they evolved there. Their skin is literally thick enough to handle it. Now, again, I realize we're already 40 minutes into the show, but if you've got a question, I've just been saying because I've been talking pretty much nonstop, absolutely pop the question into the chat room, but please put it in all caps. You know, the other thing, Operation, how are you? Glad you could join us. You know, one of the neat things I find with the Homeworld is these guys are very open to exchange. Even on Earth, they are very congenial, very respectful, and very honor bound. Okay, they are still here with the intention of helping Earth versus another imminent threat. Okay, or more to the point, they got here because of the imminent threat. And that is, they got here to protect humans from the Tekleck. That said, since that happened, the Tekleck have joined the consortium and therefore are no longer a threat to humans. There are parameters that the consortium put in place to eliminate that threat. But many Ssrraazzaassians are literally born on Earth. Okay, there's a number of reptilian races that have been born on Earth that evolved here, but Ssrraazzaassians are literally an off-world race that is still here. Okay, and they are still willing to deal with people. If you happen to run into one, good luck with that. No, I'm not going to tell you where they're hiding out. Sorry, that is one of those things I don't do. Okay, and yeah, I look at it this way. People go, well, if you can't, it's not you can't. It's that you don't know where they are. And I got no problem with that. Go with that idea. Okay. I've been told, literally, I've been accused of not telling people where things are because I'm making it up. And I've questioned this. Hence why the Ssrraazzaassian Chronicles are written the way they are. Okay. I write them as I know them. Okay, you get to figure out whether it's fantasy or reality. But given the amount of people that I've talked to that have corroborated the information I've got on various different species, okay, I take a look at it going, whether I'm nuts or not, that's somebody else's decision. I've got 3 psychiatrists that I've seen over the years, all of which said I'm perfectly sane. Little odd, but I'm perfectly sane. Okay, so you get to figure that out. But Ssrraazzaassians are very respectful, they're very helpful, and will absolutely explain what they can. But you got to remember, most of the ones, even on Earth, do not speak the human languages. Okay, many of them have learned the trade language, but it is absolutely encouraged. If you're going to deal with these people, understand there's going to be a language barrier. Okay, treat them with respect. They will treat you with respect. Okay, treat them with disrespect, and they'll literally ignore you. You don't have to worry about them like some humans. You disrespect a human, and more often than not, you get a fight or you get a show of force. The Ssrraazzaassians have no interest in a show of force unless they are going to war. Okay, and yes, their military training is you are taught to strike to damage. Okay, to strike to damage, to strike to kill. You're not taught. You're taught the basic moves. Okay, and yes, absolutely, humans are permitted to sit in and watch the training. Operation is asking, are there many alien races that speak human languages? There are a staggering number of them. Okay, to name just a few, the Ennead and the Gadafni both speak human languages. The Anunnaki speak them, as do the Mobians. Okay, all of these people are just now. The Ennead are what you know as the Egyptian gods. The Gaddafi are what you know as the Greek, Roman, and Norse gods. They're all the same. They're all the same people, just different names. The Anunnaki, okay, these are the giants, okay, that you've seen skeletons of on Earth. But they are no longer on the whole on Earth very much. Now, there are ancient races that are not human, okay, but I split the two because alien means they're not from here, ancient races means they evolved on Earth. But there are a lot of them that do speak, you know. We hit enter too quick. Just gotta wait for the rest of your question there, Mike. The thing is, there are many of them, and I can't give you numbers. Most of the ones that are humanoid, that depends on which species. Mike is asking, are they also telepathic? Now, the Gaddafi, some of them are. The Ennead, a few of them are. When you look at the Anunnaki, not at all. Okay, the Anunnaki are, well, they're a little boisterous on occasion. The Mobians absolutely are fully telepathic. Okay, and they have a full interspecies communication link. They are not in hive mind. Now, the Xenon, which also are an off-world race, that used to be on Earth, and I'm sure you've seen, if you've looked into this field at all, I'm sure you have seen some skeletons of them, or some images where they've got the double bulb of the head on the forehead. The cranium is literally split in two. These guys are full telepaths. Okay, and yes, the nice part about it is you can absolutely, and here's where it gets kind of funky. Even with the telepaths that go to the Ssrraazzaassian Homeworld, they are treated the same as everybody else. Now, Ssrraazians are not telepathic per se, but if you take a look at them, if you look at the underside of their throat, they've got a whole color band of literally well, they're a band on the collar, on the front of the throat, that they can change the color of different sections of it. It is a form of, if you will, Morse code, or something. I don't know if you want to call it Morse code or something else, but it's a light show that they do, changing the color and the frequency of the different cells in order to communicate where they cannot communicate long distance. Okay, for instance, outside in the middle of a storm. Yeah, a storm, that's a good way to put it. It is kind of a semaphore. Okay, but it's done with the colors on the bottom on the underside of the throat. Okay, but thank you for that there, Storm. Semaphore, for those of you that are not entirely certain, is the same language that the people of the flight crews on a human airport deal with to guide the planes using the lights. Okay, where they're swinging them all over the place. That is the sort of thing. But with this color pad, they can have extremely complex conversations. And they either do it if they don't desire other non-Ssrraazzaassian to know what they're talking about. Yeah, storm goes are done with either lights or flags. Lights, needless to say, are definitely used at night. Flags can be daytime or nighttime. Sorry, done that the other way. Flags are done during the day. Lights are done at night. Primarily because, well, let's face it, you desire to be able to see them. But now you can learn like you can with with Braille. You can learn to read Braille by sight. Okay, and your hands may not enable you to read it. Okay, with the Ssrraazzaassian language, you can learn how to read what they're talking about with that color code. Okay, but humans aren't built with one. Okay, and they certainly do not. They've never developed, to the best of my knowledge, technology enabling humans to actually communicate solidly. Now, they might have something for high level scientists that have moved in. In case you hadn't figured it out, I'm not a high level scientist. Okay, but they will quite readily talk to you. And, the one thing that they are not permitted to do is tell humans they cannot show humans how to build a weapon or how to build something to that effect. Okay, they can certainly go, this is what it does, right? Here's the trigger for it. But they will not pull it apart and go, here's how it gets put together. You guys desire to figure that one out, you're on your own. But I will caution you, they're built for a race that can accidentally kill you. Now, one of the other things that you got to remember is they are born honor bound with respect. They absolutely know how that works, even interspecies. Okay, so if you really desire to make an impact with these guys, be respectful. Okay, and by the way, they don't have much of a sense of humor. I mean, they've got one, but it might be classified as a little dry. They do find it comical and they will quite readily, wholeheartedly laugh if a human has been told, hands off the carburetor button. You touch that, you're a dead man. It's not a threat, it's a statement of fact. And if you get sucked into a carburetor, so be it. Oh, one other thing. With Ssrraazzaassians, if they are born, handicapped in a detrimental fashion, they're terminated. If a Ssrraazzaassian is hurt to the point of being actually crippled, they will be terminated. There is no long-term convalescence. And they'll be terminated, and literally, assuming one dies of old age, even if they've got visitors at the table, the families are really closed in. Yeah, right. Grandpa's sitting there and Grandpa keels over because he has a heart attack, but he's perfectly, there's no disease involved. He just died of old age. The nearest person to him will go, well, thanks so much for your contribution. Grab hold of him, flop him onto the table. He's now part of dinner. Okay, there is no let's have a burial. Now, if a Ssrraazzaassian dies because of a disease, they're thrown into the fusion reactor. These guys do not believe in waste. Okay, they just don't. But the nice part about it is there's no drawn out legal system. And the thing is, the legal system applies to humans and Ssrraazzaassians alike. Okay, this is not a case of, oh, you're an alien, therefore you got different laws. No. You're an alien, therefore you're an alien. However, here's the rules that you have to follow. If you don't follow them, you will get terminated the same way as everybody else. And by the way, bad news for you. Let's say you're at a dinner table with these guys. Like I said, they will cook humans their food. They don't serve raw food to humans unless it's something like their version of fruit that is safe for a human to eat. Okay, but if a human does something that ends up getting them killed, okay, and yes, there have been some that have died of old age, they will immediately get flipped onto the dinner table right there in front of the other visitors. Okay, this is dinner. Okay, now you're not expected to eat raw meat, and especially not of your own species unless you happen to be a cannibalistic race. Okay. So, I mean, these are all things that take place. Now, I'm looking at this and we're just hitting the 5-minute mark. So, I do want to say thank you so very much for sharing your time with us today. Really appreciate it. We are coming back on Friday. Okay, where are we here? Where are we? Tuesday, Friday. No, we will. Well, I'll be back on Friday, but I'm on Spaced Out Radio this Friday. Okay. Saturday, we are back here at 8 p.m. Pacific to discuss what is a one world government. Okay. And this is kind of an important one to look at. So, with that in mind, I really appreciate you sharing your time with us tonight. Thanks so much for joining us. We will be back again on Saturday, 8 p.m. Pacific. Okay, but until then, do take care of yourselves and each other, and for pity's sakes, stay positive.